There's a stigma around talking about death because we don't know what it will be like. And because it's unknown, it can be scary. A common perspective about death is, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. But this is not an easy bridge to cross. By embracing the mystery of death and by coming to terms with our own mortality, we can live a fuller life with purpose and love. In this video, we will explore Billy Meier's explanations on death and dying. To bite the dust, kick the bucket, depart, expire. These are all euphemisms we use to describe the one life event that we will all experience, death. And unfortunately, most of us don't want to think about death. We don't want to plan for it, and we don't want to even discuss death with our friends and family. And even when occasional thoughts do arise, they are banished from our consciousness even before feelings can be formed. Each day, we are confronted with news about wars, crimes, murders, and accidents that claim hundreds or even thousands of lives. But most people believe, at least in that moment, that death only affects others and doesn't apply to themselves. The internal thoughts and feelings that may arise about death, if they aren't immediately suppressed, are redirected outwards or are attached to external events and circumstances. For example, so far the war has claimed 2,000 lives, or 3 people were murdered last night downtown, or my friend Jason recently passed away. These are all understandings or recognitions of death that are identified with externally. This is the imaginary buffer or space that is created between ourselves and the idea of death. And it's exactly this thought process inside of us that needs to change. Death and life are inseparably connected. One cannot exist without the other. All human beings have a material body that ages with time and is therefore transitory and will sooner or later die. This is an unavoidable fact for every human being. And because this is an unavoidable fact, we should regularly explore our inevitable death through rational thinking and the controlled feelings that arise through this work. When we think about death, the first feelings that arise are generally uneasiness, anxiety, restlessness, and then these feelings can give rise to feelings of something threatening about death. However, the reaction to these feelings are helpful for us because they let us recognize that death is inevitable and that our physical bodies are transient, vulnerable, and impermanent. It's important not to fight a battle against death. We need to prepare for death through our understanding, reason, thoughts and feelings, and through meditation. Being prepared for death leads to a state of inner peace, which is extremely important during the dying process. However, this inner peace can only be developed and achieved during lifetime. This inner peace cannot be developed and experienced during the final hours or minutes of life just before death. In the Consciousness series of videos, we learned about the 2 different parts of our consciousness. The personality consciousness block, which is the material part of our consciousness and is as transitory as our physical bodies, and the creation energy consciousness block, also called our spirit, which is the non-material and immortal part of our being. In addition to these 2 blocks, there is another block called the overall consciousness block. This block is created by our spirit and is an all-knowing factor that stores all thoughts, feelings, experiences, and all love, knowledge, and wisdom from all previous lifetimes. The overall consciousness block is a storage bank that stores everything ever experienced in all lifetimes. To be prepared for death means to understand the purpose of death. Life and death are connected in a circle of life, or in other words, a cycle of life. This means that death is nothing other than a point in a circle. There's something before and something after. However, because we don't know, or are not conscious of, what is after death, this is what creates the anxiety. The so-called afterworld isn't a place that we will be sitting in the clouds and playing a harp, nor is it a place with fire and brimstone. In fact, heaven and hell are both fictional places created by man. There is no such thing as heaven or hell. The afterworld is a plane of existence that occupies the exact same living space on Earth as our physical existence, except that its time and space are differently dimensioned. This means that our normal daily existence takes place in one dimension, and the afterworld or death life takes place in another dimension, both of which are in the same location but exist in different dimensions. When our spirit crosses over to the hereafter, it arranges itself into the spirit we form that exists there. This spirit we form is a combination of all the human spirit forms existing in the afterworld. For our human understanding, this spirit we form can be seen as a huge, light-emitting, milky, wobbling cloud, which appears as a fog-like structure and self-radiates in the brightest light, which is normally invisible to the material human eye. Not only does this differently dimensioned afterworld exist on the planet Earth, but it extends into the whole universe. The reason for this is that if a planet is destroyed or becomes uninhabitable, the spirit forms existing on it are not destroyed. They are able to wander or migrate through the universe in this afterworld dimension until a new planet is found with human life. On this new planet, the spirit forms can then settle and mix into the cycle of reincarnation. In the afterworld, time plays no role at all because the spirit forms existing there are not subject to a feeling of time. According to a human understanding, this could be considered as existing in timelessness. When a person dies, their spirit and their overall consciousness block immediately transition to the afterworld. At this point, everything that was unprocessed during the last physical life is processed by the overall consciousness block, after which the personality consciousness block is then dissolved into pure, neutral creation energy, so nothing remains of the previous personality. It's important to remember, all of life's experiences, including memories, thoughts, feelings, personality, character, and everything sensed or perceived, are maintained in the storage banks of the overall consciousness block. The dissolving of the personality consciousness block has nothing to do with the retained experiences from all previous lives stored in the overall consciousness block. From the neutral creation energy, the overall consciousness block then forms a new personality consciousness block. This new personality consciousness block is completely new and empty and has absolutely no connection to any previous personalities. All of the memories, thoughts, feelings, personality, character, and everything sensed or perceived from all previous lives remain in the storage banks of the overall consciousness block and are not processed any further in the afterworld, because a material life with material experiences are necessary to grow these values. While existing in the spirit we form as being, each individual creation energy form works through the experiences and learnings from the material life that have a creational evolutionary value. These values are then transformed into effective knowledge, wisdom, and true love by our creation energy consciousness. This processing by the creation energy consciousness continues until the values reach their attainable maximum. Once all the creational evolutionary values collected from the previous material life are processed up to the last iota
and transformed to their attainable present maximum values, then the creation energy becomes reincarnation capable again, after which it is born again in a physical body in order to collect new values through the new material life.
Because all of these past life experiences are stored in the overall consciousness block, they are hidden from us during our lifetime. This enormous body of knowledge and experience from our previous lifetimes exists in our overall consciousness block and can only be activated and used through conscious searching, self-observation, and by noticing inspirations or inklings from the subconscious. It's important to learn to recognize these inspirations so we can work with them in our present life with our present consciousness, which will inevitably lead to an evolutionary growth of our consciousness. Hopefully, this clearly illustrates that all of our faults, bad behaviors, ways of thinking, and our personality deficiencies that are present at death won't be erased with the passing of life. We start our next life at the exact same evolutionary level, with all of the same faults and ways of thinking. That's why it's so important to identify all of our deficiencies now and to work to correct them in this life. If we can do this, our next existence will be easier. Let's talk for a moment about the actual dying process, which is the same for every single human life form. When a human being dies in a normal and natural way, very particular symptoms appear. Sometime before death, either minutes or hours, depending on the person, we will become aware that our life clock is running out and that we will soon die. However, in many cases, the person won't want to accept this awareness and will rebel against it. In this case, fear and terror will overwhelm him. Or, depending on how one lived their life, there could be a rejoicing and acceptance and a very tranquil peace that will come over us. The moment of death is when the life bond or interconnection between the spirit form and the body are broken. At this moment, the spirit form and the overall consciousness block withdraws from the body and enters into the afterworld realm. The moment of dying is not when the last breath has been taken, nor when the heartbeat stops, because these are functions of the physical body. The exact moment of dying is the cessation of all brain activity. This is the moment when the spirit form and the overall consciousness block make their lightning-like escape to the afterworld. Between the time when the last breath has been taken and the cessation of all brain activity, there's a period of seconds or minutes where the brain is still capable of perceptions, which appear as fast-changing visions. Billy calls this the state of agony. We need to pause here for a moment to define the word agony, because agony means something different in German than it does in English. Billy defines the word agony as death struggle, and the Oxford Duden German Dictionary defines agony as in the throes of death. So in German, agony is a state between life and death. In English, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines agony as 1a, intense pain of mind or body, 1b, the struggle that precedes death, and 2, a violent struggle or contest. The listed synonyms are hell, horror, misery, torment, and torture. Even though agony is generally used in the 1a definition, intense pain of mind or body, Billy's usage of agony in German is consistent with the 1b definition, the struggle that precedes death. Billy further defines agony as, quote, the actual dying stage which slowly allows life to drain away through reduced vital processes. Agony, explained differently, is a state of increasing restriction, dysregulation of vital body functions, vita reducta or vita minima, end quote. These last two terms are Latin and mean reduced life. So, Billy's usage of agony means a state that precedes death and a state of declining bodily functions. Agony is the actual dying stage where the connection to physical reality has been severed. Agony is a state of inner peace, quiet, and harmony, because all material connections have been cut and no more fear of death exists. The panorama of visions that occur in the state of agony are peaceful, love-filled, and harmonious. The actual process of dying and the escape of the spirit form and overall consciousness block from the physical body has absolutely no suffering or pain. The existence of the spirit form in the afterworld, sometimes called the death life, is also completely free of pain and suffering because there is no more physical existence. Suffering and pain can only be felt and experienced in the physical world and not in a pure energy existence. Depending on the person, the state of agony normally lasts for several minutes, during which the person is no longer responsive to the environment. However, all of the senses can be heightened in their function, and the person registers everything that's going on around him. This includes spoken words, whispered words, and thoughts of people nearby or even thousands of miles away. In this highly sensitized state, the person's consciousness powers are increased, and they are now able to do things they were not able to do during their lifetime, such as telepathy and telekinesis. The spirit form powers are suddenly usable according to one's own wishes or will. Through this, people closely connected to him could hear his voice or have a feeling that he's dying. It could also be that in his home a mirror breaks or a vase falls to the ground or other similar occurrences. After the lightning-like transition of the spirit form into the afterworld, the spirit form does not immediately join the spirit we form in the afterworld. It floats away for a few seconds in the beyond and is still able to see and recognize the deceased body, the surroundings, and surviving relatives through Empfindung. However, the spirit form does not have the slightest connection or relationship to the body it just left, because the ties between them are severed and the spirit form is in its true element, the afterworld. It has absolutely no earthly or material interests. It should be pointed out clearly and unequivocally that after death and in the afterworld, neither fear, apprehension, nor fright are felt. This is the same for people who live their lives correctly, as well as for those who are evil or wicked. The afterworld is neutral positively balanced, and is not subject to the negative and the positive as it is here on earth. For our immortal spirit form, death of the physical body means an evolution-rich existence in the afterworld, in which everything that was perceived and stored during the existence of the material body is processed into love, knowledge, peace, and wisdom. Let's talk for a moment about being prepared for death. It's really important to think about and to consider death and how it's connected to life. This thinking and exploration is done through thoughts and feelings. It's important to keep in mind that life is impermanent and does not last forever. Spending some time thinking and feeling about life and death will slowly develop an understanding for these processes, which will enable us to interpret the signs of life, dying, and death. It's also important to realize that the individual path of life, of dying, and finally death is different for each human being. Because each human being has an individual personality and character, as well as unique knowledge, understanding, experiences, and evolutionary differences, the experience of dying and death will be fundamentally different for each person. If we apply ourselves in the proper way throughout our lives to understand the meaning of death through our thoughts and feelings, there can be a certain form of excitement that arises from thoughts and feelings of curiosity. And this particular form of excitement has an effect on our thoughts and feelings and can trigger a joy of expectation and certainty that death is not only an end to our present physical life, but a new beginning with a new life, new body, and new personality, which is completely free and unencumbered. Each person should be curious on how they will actually use their knowledge, wisdom, insight, and understanding when dying and passing into death, in order to say goodbye to life in dignity and peace, and to enter death with respect and reverence. Of course, There are no guarantees that everything will happen as we imagine it. But if we approach life, dying, and death in a truthful, insightful, and understandable way in order to prepare for dying and death, then peace, love, and harmony will reign when it comes time to say goodbye to life in the material world and enter the sphere of the beyond. Well, thank you for joining me for this video on death and dying. I wanted to leave you with 2 quotes from Billy's book, Rebirth, Life, Dying, Death, and Mourning.
The process of normal dying takes place as a gradual dissolution of consciousness, which lets go of thoughts and feelings and gives way to agony, where no more thoughts and feelings exist, but only fine spiritual perception that originates from the realm of the spirit and only allows a peaceful, loving, and harmonious perception. Everything that's purely worldly absolutely loses meaning, and only the light of love, peace, tranquility, and being gain existence. If during his life a man has familiarized himself with this and the actual process of dying, then he will be able to cope with it in every way and connect with it in unity when the moment comes. Meaning, at the time of the transition to death, if man has actually mastered this process in life, then he will willingly face death, entrust himself to it, and surrender his life without hesitation. When the individual functions of the material body gradually dissolve, then joy and peace, as well as true love and boundless freedom appear, revealing the radiant light of the elementary spiritual beyond. Consciousness falls into agony, whereby the material world disappears as if through a veil, and gives way to a sphere that is full of harmony and shines in a radiant brightness that no material eye can see. The material state of consciousness dissolves, and the clear light of the threshold of death leads the way into the otherworldly creational infinity.